Now we're going to put a couple of the graphs that we've learned together and figure out how a perfectly competitive firm finds their profits. So far we've learned that profits are a combination of, profits are basically what's left over when we look at total revenue minus total cost. Let me change this so I'm not writing on such a slant. Total revenue times total cost. So we learned in the last video that total revenue is price times quantity. And then the costs are simply whatever the firm's costs are. The firm can't choose the price because they are subject to the market price, but they are able to choose their profit maximizing level of Q star. So in the last video, we found out that the price for, I think we were talking about rice, the price of rice was $15 a pound, and that firm was going to be producing 13 units. Okay, so maybe that's 13 units an hour, maybe it's 13 units a month, maybe it's not a very profitable market, but usually we see that in perfect competition there aren't going to be very high profits, and we'll find out that in the long run there are going to be what we call zero profits. Anytime that there are profits to be gained, new firms will flood the market because there's free entry and free exit, driving the price down because of the increase in supply. But let's go ahead and look at what happens when we put a couple of the different graphs together. So going back a couple chapters, we learned that most firms have a marginal cost curve that looks something like the Nike swoosh. Okay, so we're going to call this our marginal cost curve. And we know for a perfectly competitive firm, if this is price and this is quantity, that this line right here is going to be representing our demand, which is also equal to our marginal revenue. Okay, very important. So we know just from this graph that the firm is going to produce at this point, where marginal cost is exactly equal to marginal revenue. So marginal cost coming down to marginal revenue, we'll say that that's 13 units. And the cost, let's say, the price that we're selling at is $5. Okay, so basically we've taken the information from the last two chapters where we have marginal cost, the last couple of videos where we learned marginal cost in the last chapter, and then the price and quantity for this particular firm. So this is still our profit max Q star. So we know how many units the firm is going to be producing, and we know that the price that they're going to be selling it at, but we don't have enough information yet to figure out if this firm is going to have profits or what the profits are going to be. We know that they can't have any higher profits than if they produce 13 units. So if they produce 14 units or 15 units or 12 units, no other quantity is going to give them a higher profit, but we don't actually know if this firm is having positive profits, negative profits, if they're having zero profits. The one additional curve that we need to bring in is our average total cost curve. So if we remember when we were going over the cost curves, just kind of a review down here, if we look at the average cost curves, we had our average fixed cost curve, our average variable cost curve, and our average total cost curve. And this last one is the one that we're going to need to bring in over there. But if this is costs and this is output or quantity, we had one average curve that looked something like this. And we had one, depending on where it would be, that maybe looked something like this. And then I should extend this a little bit. Then we had one that looked something maybe like that. Okay, so we have three different average cost curves here. This one that starts off high and decreases and never increases is our average fixed cost. This middle one must be our average variable cost because it's less than our average total cost. So this average total cost curve is what we need to bring over here. So I'm going to go ahead and add this average total cost curve, and I'm going to add it in red. So now that we bring in our average total cost curve, I'm going to say, and this is just arbitrarily made up for this firm, I'm going to say that their average total cost curve looks something, let's say like that. And this is their average total cost. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're only going to focus on this point of 13 units of output at $5. So we know that we can very easily find the total revenue is equal to $5 times 13 units. Okay, so now we need to figure out what total costs are going to be in order to find out if they have any profits. So at 13 units, well, actually, I guess we should go back and make sure that we write in here that this is going to be $65. Okay, so at 13 units, let's see where that average cost curve intersects. It looks like, well, it's definitely below $5. Maybe we'll say that this intersects at $4, $3.50. Let's say $3.50. Okay, so now that we have the average total cost at $3.50, we know that per unit it's costing them $3.50. So we'll say total cost is $3.50, and we're going to times that by 13 units and see that it's what, 45 and a half, 45.5 dollars. Okay, so when we just have the marginal cost, that's not enough to tell us profits, because the marginal cost, remember, tells us that for this last unit that we produced, the 13th unit, it's costing for that particular unit $5. But it's not telling us what all the previous units were costing. So basically, if we were to look over here and say, well, how much did the 10th unit cost? Well, not $5. It looks like the 10th unit was significantly less. So we could add up all the different marginal costs and try and figure average cost, or try and figure out the total cost that way. But we can simply just work backwards. If we know the average cost per unit at the profit maximizing level of output, we can simply times that quantity times the cost that it costs the firm to produce those different units of output on average, and we can get to the total cost. So this firm has positive profits. Let me grab a different color. This area in here are the positive profits that the firm has. So it looks like this firm has positive profits of $19.50, $65 for how much they're bringing in. So profits are equal to total revenue minus total cost. So $65 is what they're bringing in, and it's costing them $45.50. So that means that their profits are equal to $19.50. I don't know if that's per day. Hopefully that's per hour, or something along that line. So this is how we would be able to find profits. So we need the average total cost curve in order to find profits. The marginal cost curve and the marginal revenue curve tell us what level the output's going to be determined, or is going to determine what the profit maximizing level of output is going to be. And then over here we'll be able to work backwards and very easily figure out what the costs are going to be. So on an exam, you should definitely be able to label all of these curves just by sight. These ones down here too. For the upcoming exam, we definitely want to make sure that we can label all of our curves just by looking at them. Okay, that should be a pretty good review to get you guys started on, obviously, our average fixed, average variable, average total cost curves from before, and then the profit maximizing level of output. We did a recap on that, and also how you find profits.